All right, we are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, we have the Week 10 recaps. So, to get straight into it, the Raiders and the Broncos. The second I saw that this was a Thursday night game, even before it came on, I had my doubts. But again, like many others, I definitely watched the whole thing. Now, yes, this was via stream and Prime, of course. Not to mention the countless other fans who watched in their own places or were there live in the flesh to attend the game on a cold, chilly night in Colorado. Even with the conditions being the way that they were, at the very least, the Broncos fan base around there, we're definitely expecting to win this game. And we're definitely trying to get their money's worth. They call it Mile High for a reason. But what a lot of people, including myself, would come to witness would actually turn out to be one of the worst games in NFL history. Now, again, yes, that statement can get thrown around a lot. I mean, I've not crapped on a game like that, but I've definitely had my fair share of statements saying or calling certain games dud games or tank bowls and so on and so forth. Like, it happens every now and then. Not every single game is going to be a great on-screen product or maybe great to watch in person. But you have a good amount of balance, more often than not, throughout a general NFL season. And it's specifically with some of these Thursday night football games. What the hell do these people think they are cooking up? Sometimes I just don't know. But as far as this game is, I heard something tremendously crazy. There was a graphic on NFL Live, like the next day, mentioning that the combined 10 first downs between both of these teams would actually amount to one of the 11 worst totals amongst any game in NFL history. And I want you to think about that for a second. This happened in 2025. We're going all the way back through before the advent of the forward pass. Before the advent of any real rules in the game. Then obviously you have the creation of the NFL and teams were just going to town there. Then you had, whenever rules did start to get implemented more and more, physicality and reckless defensive play were still heavily imposed at the time. And teams still managed to thug out a far greater total of first downs for the most part. Before we even get into having all these different penalties and regulations that are conducive to higher offensive output and more productive games from that front. And teams are still finding a way to get that stuff done. And with all of that coming to a head, as again the NFL continues to grow over time, you get this random game on this random Thursday night in early November, amounting to one of the worst ever in the entire history of the league when it comes to that metric. It's just absolutely diabolical to think about. And it's one thing, again, to just look at that number and say that, hey, it amounts to one of the 11 worst. That's fine. And yes, you have to account for the fact that conditions might have been a little tough out there to adjust to, especially if you're the Raiders. I mean, you're playing in a dome stadium in your home games, and now you have to deal with that kind of weather. Maybe they weren't expecting that. But the on-field product was just as underwhelming. I mean, I had all these notes here, but all of them are generally going to amount to the same thing. Because you have to understand the flow of this game, okay? The Raiders could not protect Geno Smith to save their lives. Every single pass rusher on that front line had a field day going after him, to the point where he is now, if I didn't already have it down here, he is now out with a quad contusion. He was literally limping off by the end of the game after a sack that Nick Benito had on him, I think. That's how bad he was getting it back there. It was tough. Bo Nix was just as inept on his front. Obviously, the Raiders defense definitely hunkered down at some key moments. Don't get me wrong. But they actually showed a graphic, had the nerve to show a graphic that said that his streak of consecutive games with a touchdown pass is the second longest amongst active players, behind only Lamar Jackson. You didn't see a whole lot of that in this game, outside of one pretty good throw to Pat Bryant II for 43 yards. And man, we'll get to that entire sequence in a second. Not a lot of that went down. Even when the Raiders had something going right, whether it be them being placed in great field position, which is a totally different story as well, or whether it be Ashton Jeanty honestly having a solid night, penalty after penalty after penalty served to be their unraveling in this game. And outside of the early touchdown from Ashton Jeanty in the first quarter, that would be the final score they had all night long, with a combination of all those things. The Broncos defense is just as great, so you were left in a bit of a stalemate here. And it didn't necessarily have to be that way. The Broncos have consistently gone through this thing, where they just can't offense through the first three quarters, and then they just magically find something. It's been a struggle for them all season long, but at least to this point, they found a way. Man, they had to get extra creative. Because not only was the offensive production underwhelming in this game, but we need to have a conversation about their special teams. Because ironically enough, after this game, the Raiders would fire their special teams coordinator in Tom McMahon, which again, that's kind of tough, but at the same time, they just opted to be as aggressive as possible instead of trusting Daniel Carlson. And then when the time came for it later on in the fourth quarter, they crumbled completely. Not only did they have a blocked punt, or gave up a blocked punt rather, the Raiders did, but they also, when it came time to tie up the ball game in the fourth quarter, on what would have been a pretty important drive, he missed the field goal. So you already lost the field position battle by giving them an easy lane to work with. Yet somehow, some way in that sequence, the Broncos still didn't do anything at all and had to settle for a field goal at that point, which would eventually allow them to win the game. But the fact that we hear about the special teams coordinator there getting fired, and we don't hear a lick about whatever's going on in Denver right now, it's kind of wild to me. Because more specifically, rookie punter Jeremy Crawshaw. This has got to be the most frustrating aspect of this game. I'm just going to list off just how far some of these punts travel. Okay. "30 yards. 51 yards. That's decent. 36 yards. 38 yards. 54 yards is decent. Granted. 39 yards. 45 yards is decent. But you're talking about multiple under 40-yard punts. And in every single one of those situations, you had the Raiders get somewhat grand field position. I mean, they literally mentioned a graphic at some point in this game. And it might have shifted, if it was earlier. But at a point in this game, their average starting field position was at their own 37-yard line, while the Broncos were at their own 13 on a majority of their drives or something like that. Just think about that. And for the Raiders to get that going for them and only allow themselves to convert on one such opportunity, the only opportunity that resulted in a score across the entire game, when this man was out here shanking punts left and right. No amount of conditions could save some of these. He flat out shanked them. And the Raiders still could not move the ball down the field as a collective well enough to make them pay for it. This whole sequence right here put it into perspective. And this is what made things genuinely confusing to me. You get yet another shank from Crawshaw here, and extra few yards are tacked on because of a penalty on one of the gunners. And from that point, the Raiders have a chance at least to get on the board, you would think. Yet all that happens is, one, they call this weird sweep to Brock Powers. But at the same time, I'm not going to lie, Nick Bonito did a good job of covering it, ensuring that he didn't have any space to run on the outside. So there's a little bit of a pass there, I guess, right? But then you have Johnny Barron. Hey, at least he's out there. He gets a nice open field tackle on Michael Mired. And at that point, it's 4th and 5. You're inside Denver's 40-yard line. Now, I get that you may not necessarily trust Daniel Carlson's leg at this point in these conditions. And I do understand the motivation to go for it, seeing as, again, you have him granting you field position and handing it to you on a silver platter, and you hadn't been taking advantage of it the entire game. But this is where I have to actually question Pete Carroll. Because as soon as this play gets called, Hufanga just lit the hell up. out of fucking Geno Smith in the backfield. Leads to a 9-yard loss and grants the Broncos great field position. And then that immediately leads to the aforementioned Bryant the second crosser, and eventually Bo Nix extending his passing touchdowns in consecutive game streak, getting one to his Oregon teammate in Troy Franklin to tie up the ball game at that point. So the entire game, you had been playing conservative to that point. Why was that the moment that you decided, okay, we're going to be aggressive, we're going to go for it? You were better off just punting in that situation, ensuring that they were back as deeply into a corner as possible in their own territory. As crazy as this might sound, even if you run the football and it gains some form of positive yardage, you're not allowing the Broncos to go out there and have an upper hand here. That's standard field position somewhat at this point. But instead, you now decide to be aggressive and you promptly lose yardage, and it leads to a tie ball game instead of you having a potential double-digit lead or protecting this one and making the Broncos work even harder to get on the board. That was the encapsulation of the fuck shit in this game. And it did not stop. It didn't stop there. Both quarterbacks were just fucking committed to chucking up deep shots for some reason. Why exactly, I'm not sure. But Bo Nix, at two different points in this game, to end off the half, and also on what would be a pretty good opportunity for the Raiders here, before we get into the missed field goal from Carlson, Q Blue Kelly, of all cornerbacks, actually managed to get Bo Nix at multiple points in this ball game. You get the turnovers, you have the countless shanked punts, and they still didn't score. What does that tell you? It was just, it is actually a little mind-numbing, to say the least. But at the end of the day, somebody got to win, somebody got to lose. I guess you can say the Broncos won this, but should they really be, I don't know, even a few players on the team have just come out and had their own kind of statements about this. This is not how you want to be operating as a team. But yeah, just a rough night for both teams, generally speaking. It was definitely a stout defensive effort, but you also just had some really ugly offensive play. Ugly. Rougher night for Dante Thornton Jr. as well, especially in the first half, because they also reiterated that throughout the game. One of his holding penalties took off a massive Genty run. And also, near the end of the half, as they were trying to go down and score, Geno Smith on one of the deep shots actually did throw a pretty nice pass his way, had his man beat, and he dropped it. Tough situation to go through as a rookie. But the Broncos would win 10-7. My goodness. Geno Smith, 143 passing yards and an interception for him on 61.5% completion, while Genty had 60 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Passing numbers for both teams aren't necessarily relevant to this, but It's worth noting that Tyler Lockett was the leading receiver for both teams with 5 catches for 44 yards. A man that had been underutilized all season long and was still getting the ball in some pretty weird spots in this game, managed to be the leading receiver in this. Again, obviously, it's all love for Tyler Lockett, but I think that really just wraps the bow on it. Like, that tells you so much. As for Bo Nix, he had a touchdown and 2 interceptions on 150 yards passing and on 57.1% completion. J.K. Dobbins had 18 rushes for 77 yards as well. Tough break for R.J. Harvey as well. They had a graphic showing that he was the first rookie running back since Gale Sayers to have a receiving touchdown in at least 3 straight games. He didn't even get a proper shot to get his 4th straight. Also, it will be detailed per Adam Schefter that they, with this win, would have 7 in the last 39 days, which is tied for the most in that span since 1935, as the 1973 Dolphins did it, and the 2021 Packers did it overtime. On another more serious note, just briefly, just ever so briefly, the fact that I'm trying to give it as much respect as possible, but I was not anticipating to talk about the game for that much time. This is pretty serious, though. A few weeks back, Alex Singleton had a drug test from the NFL, the Broncos linebacker. And at some point of time, in the process of all that, as results were coming back in, they found a tumor for testicular cancer in his body. Now again, at the time, this wasn't known, per Schefter. This was definitely kept under wraps. He wasn't intent on having this information go public. But after this particular game, Raiders vs. Broncos, last Thursday night, he would have that tumor removed. And at that point, I guess he decided that, like a statement, he essentially said, just spreading awareness about it is the most important thing. And if he can get his story out there for others to take in, look at, maybe they can be inspired to speak up and out about those things as well if they are confronting them. That's definitely respectable. Again, you just never truly know what people are going through sometimes. Like, that's wild. To pick up on that through a drug test. And again, as random as they are, it came through at the right time for him. Good to see that it is now out. But they, appropriately so, have now ruled him out so that he can continue to recover, get his mind and body right as well. So at the very least, that's something worth noting about this game. That's definitely a brighter component to what was otherwise just a pretty weird outcome here. But moving on from that into the Sunday action. Starting out with the Seahawks versus the Cardinals. Man, if only I had my belt on me. If only I did. How exactly can you put something like that into words? Back-to-back weeks, just going on an absolute demolition to each of their last two opponents. Like, I literally, there's no way for me to try to strategically break this thing down. Because I could talk about this play and that play and Y play and B play, whatever. 35-0 by before the halfway mark of the second quarter. 2 defensive touchdowns off of strip sacks from Tyrese Knight by DeMarcus Lawrence himself. Like, what exactly can you do about it? Nothing I could possibly say can account for something like that going down. How does one truly overcome that? It's hard. It's hard to do. And the fact that the Seahawks can sit up here and still go through tremendous offensive struggle throughout the rest of the game. Maybe by nature of being a conservative team, but also they had a few turnovers. Sam Darnold threw an interception off a tip pass, and he got sack fumbled 2 times. And yet, on at least one of those times, the defense held up anyways. You got the offense out here getting off to these early starts, and then the defense is just completely suffocating people. Like, that is complimentary football at its finest. And even with the Cardinals managing to get 22 points on the board, at no point did this feel like a close game. You know, they kept on saying that this Cardinals team definitely might have been a little more convincing, just constantly coming after Kyler Murray the whole time. Because they thought that Jacoby Brissett was playing better in this. No, the Cardinals are owned by the Seahawks, no matter who's in at quarterback position. But this might have put that to rest a little bit. I mean, the Seahawks are that great of a defense. Let's be honest with ourselves. But, man. And they stayed out there the whole time. Like, they were playing for their pride before halftime even kicked in. You cannot make that up. You can't. Like, I cannot sit here and be biased. I just can't. Like, one, this is a blowout game. Like, you get the gist of what happened in it. I'm absolutely loving what I'm seeing. Don't get me wrong, but I gotta be fair. There are definitely games this week that were a bit more compelling. So for the sake of time, I'm definitely going to keep it short. And I will add a little more as we look into the numbers here. Because when you look at it, 178 yards, a touchdown and an interception for Sam Darnold, if I'm not mistaken, is a season low. Although he did still pass for 83.3% completion percentage, but also had 3 total turnovers. That's definitely something you want to have cleaned up. But at the same time, again, yes, there are going to be tougher games ahead. You do not want to be dealing with those things. And that's the second game this season where it's like, okay, you're rolling as an offense, and then you just completely sputter. The same thing that happened in the Texans game. They lost the turnover margin and won by 8. Now, yes, this is a completely different situation. I mean, you want to try to keep your foot on the gas pedal But at the same time, again, conservative nature of the team, and also you're spotted a 35-point lead. To try to consistently replicate that can be tough. It is. But it is good to see that going down. Simply put. The team as a whole also found their rushing attack. They've been trying to implement their efficiency. They've definitely gone out of their way to run the football. It's clear that the percentage favors the run game. Even though, again, the passing game is just as explosive, if not more explosive, in their own right. That's a team they combined to run for 198 yards and 2 touchdowns on a pretty efficient average. They got Rashid Shaheed active. He had a catch, and he also had a few runs in this game as a gadget player, already putting that to work. Cooper Kupp had a 67-yard catch on a 2-reception, 74-yard day. And yes, Jackson Smith and Jigba's 100-yard game streak would be broken. But he was still 7 yards short. He still got a 43-yard touchdown catch on the first drive of the game, along with 5 receptions as well. And they played them so well, they didn't have to rely on consistently throwing the football. They didn't have to. Even with that being said, he's still on pace to account for a great number of the team's total passing yards. He's still on pace to break Calvin Johnson's receiving record in the season. He's still just that good of a fucking wide receiver right now. Gotta love it, man. Again, defensive contributions, man, what more is there to be said? Whether you see DeMarcus Lawrence with these 2 fumble returns for touchdowns, or Tariq Woolen putting in work, or Drake Thomas getting in some action, or Devin Witherspoon continuing to be a damn good corner, Leonard Williams wreaking havoc in the backfield, and you also had Boye Mafe get in some action as well. But of course, you can't not talk about Tyrese Knight getting 8 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 forced fumbles. Also, Nick Amawori, the rookie out of South Carolina. Great to have him on this fucking team. Like, from what he did at the Combine, to actually see the Seahawks manage to get him in the second round when they did. He is playing his ass off. And in this game, he had 9 tackles, a half sack, and 4 pass deflections. All over the fucking place. It's crazy. I mean, he's out here with this connection with Derwin James Jr., and I think that's what the comp was initially. You're definitely seeing that right now. As for the Cardinals, Brissett had 258 passing yards, 2 touchdowns on 50% completion, but also the aforementioned 2 lost fumbles. Rushing game was a little weird. If not for this Dave Mercado 55-yard run late, they'd probably have been held to under 100 yards, but they got 129 as a team. And Trey McBride had 9 receptions for 127 yards and a touchdown in this game. Sorry, just had to briefly talk about that. Gotta move on for the sake of a little time and give respect to a few of these other ones out here. Alright. Hell, like this next one right here. Let's see. Ravens Vikings. The 100th game for Lamar Jackson in his NFL career to this point would not start off so hot for his team. Vikings defense is too great. I mean, literally, I'll look away for a second, and on the first play, you have Grenard getting a swat on a screenplay. And for a while, it was kind of that way. Like, you look at the entire first half for their offense, boy. Just a combination of brutal things. I mean, they, one, could not catch the football to save their lives. There were plays they had damn good chances to convert crucial downs. And you had Mark Andrews out here dropping passes. You had Isaiah Likely out here dropping passes. The shit was crazy. Like, at that rate, it gets to a point. But there are also situations where they just completely tried to test these edge rushers. And they were not relenting. Andrew Von Gonkel is not a person you want in pass coverage per se. But on the line, early and even later on in the game, man got some impressive bat downs. Grenard was consistently trying to sack Lamar Jackson, and there wasn't a thing that any of those offensive linemen could do about it. And I don't know, it was just hard for them to implement anything. Obviously, their strength is going to be the rushing attack. But even then, Derrick Henry is certainly going to be a volume player. But they clogged up those rushing lanes early. And again, it put the Ravens in spots where they had third and long situations, forcing the throw, and the Vikings got exactly what they wanted out of it. They wanted to keep everything short, prevent explosive plays, and that really did happen for the most part in this game. The defense for the Ravens is a completely different story, especially when looking at how this progressed for the Vikings offense. I mean, they couldn't have started off a first series of drives any better. You know, you get the stop on Lamar Jackson and that ball club, and then they work a fucking nasty pick route, allowing Jalen Nailor to creep out on the left side of the field and then turn up, making a wave of defenders miss somehow, some way, getting into the red zone and in go-to-go territory. They kept on picking on Alohi Gilman, by the way. Not every single time, but at points. The gap that he was supposed to be running towards or accounting for would just be left completely open because somebody else would motion over and move his ass out of the way. That's exactly how the Vikings scored their first touchdown. While they would settle down over time, it was still strange, but at the very least they were forcing McCarthy to get in some uncomfortable situations. I mean, this one right here, this interception is a little tough, but you can kind of understand it. As I'm saying the whole time watching it, McCarthy with the pressure from Jones on the outside, Draymond Jones that is, he had no other choice but to step up and throw, and he did a great job of stepping up to throw the football. It's just that he let that shit hang in the air for too long, and people were trying to say Justin Jefferson slowed down on his route. No, he didn't. He had no chance of catching it. And Starks had the safety help back there, did a great job of working it, and just like that, the Ravens were in position to make something happen. But they would be deterred and forced to settle for a field goal. No problem, though. As long as you are keeping the damage to a minimum if you're the Vikings, you're seemingly okay. But again, if your offense is going to continue to stagnate, well, that's not always going to work. And, I mean, they got a great return here. Yet, you proceed to have Taven Bryan bat down a pass and then force a 3-and-out. That's where the Ravens decided to get their stride a little bit, play with some tempo, and that went well enough. But when we get to this play right here, a little bit confusing. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. Lamar Jackson's definitely a superstar caliber quarterback. He's gonna get those calls. But Dallas Turner damn near knocked that man out with the way that he got right around the wrap him and drove his ass into the ground. The thing is, they threw a flag and called this roughing the passer. And I'm like, I don't know about that. You know, typically, it would go down that way if the ball is out of the quarterback's hands. That's how the rule is. Lamar Jackson is still so engaged into the sack that he can't possibly let go of the football in that situation. Otherwise, it would be a fumble. He's holding on to it the entire way. And just because it might have come with a little more of a rough quality to it, you flag Turner for it? I don't know about that shit. That's a poor reflection on their offensive line when it comes to their pass protection. Because in no way, shape, or form, with Lamar Jackson just coming back from a hamstring injury, should you be allowing him to get hit like that in the first place. But that was definitely legal. There was nothing rough, I guess, per the penalty about that at all. Absolute BS. And yet still, that would only lead to the Ravens getting a field goal. But it was a 1-point ball game at that rate. And then it became fully Ravens. For a good portion of the rest of this game. It didn't help that another brutal interception would be thrown down the field as Marlon Humphrey just decided to wait out a fucking entourage. Try to set one up so he could get a deep return. Still wasn't that damn great. I again, don't really understand what the obsession was with that. But nevertheless, the Ravens were actually starting to drive a bit more, but still settling for the bare minimum in 3 points. Nevertheless, they had the lead at this point. And it's here where some really fucked up shit started to happen. You see, Miles Price had actually been doing a pretty good job of returning kicks, at least from the last game against the Lions. I'm going to give credit where credit is due, but in allowing this special teams player for the Ravens to just completely punch the ball out and give Ravens a short field, that would prove to be the first brutal dagger in this one. And that would immediately lead to the Ravens, even though they had to do a little work for it. That's how they managed to score their first touchdown of the day. Aided by a crazy third down play. They were trying to do the little Mark Andrews thing up the gut, which again, they've had a high success rate with it. But then you see this man throw a fucking sweep over to Lamar's direction as he's out wide. And he managed to get the amount of yardage that he needed. It's a short yardage situation. So you definitely had the advantage in blockers on the outside. But wow. I did not expect them to unload that. Nevertheless, Justice Hill would score. And disaster, lightning, almost struck twice for the Norsemen. They had not one, but two fumbles forced on this play. One via friendly fire, with the man running into his own teammate and losing the ball. then you have somebody else picking up the return and having it get fucking swatted out of their arms as well. Luckily, they recovered it, and the Vikings still didn't do anything with the ball because they turned the ball over on downs, with Kyle Hamilton just being an absolute unit, of course. And after this, Adam Thielen, on a play that he was penalized for, actually decided to talk a little shit. Like, he got fucking heated. I did not see that coming. Like, they got him on an illegal blindside block, and granted, that's exactly what it was. So I don't know what he got so mad for. But he would not stop. He was trying to let the refs hear it. He had something to say, and he was going to get that shit off. That would have potentially been a game-ending sequence for the Vikings. If only the Ravens would have scored, they would miss the field goal from 56 yards out. And granted, the Vikings, although they had to grind this one out, they would make it a one-score ball game with a field goal. But the Ravens would manage to give themselves even more distance here. They just started to lean on Derrick Henry. They just started to lean on that man. It's how the flow of the game goes. Ultimately, when they got into 3rd and 2 in the red zone, it would be Lamar Jackson to handle the responsibility. And he would eventually get in Mark Andrews from 2 yards out for a touchdown catch. Literally just fading back, holding onto the ball like this. And they did manage to get the 2-point conversion. 2-possession ball game. Uphill battle for the Vikings to have to fight here. And anticlimactically, yet again, when they absolutely needed it, Nate Wiggins and also Jenkins, one of their defensive tackles, stepped up big time and got some swats to stop him in his tracks. The Ravens tried to put it away, but they couldn't guard Jalen Nailor. They couldn't. The man himself picked up 2 consecutive 4th down conversions on this drive, capped off with a 10-yard touchdown catch where nobody accounted for the man. He was just able to get in a pretty solid catch on the boundaries easily. No one in sight. Don't know how that happens when he had been the guy torching you for most of the game. But that's neither here nor there. Nevertheless, as the Ravens would punt again, just trying to take more time off the clock, put all of the pressure on the Vikings. Again, you got to go down, you got to score a touchdown, and then you got to score a 2-point conversion. And it was looking somewhat promising when you had J.J. McCarthy scamper so freely for 26 yards. But that proved to be futile, as when it came to 4th and short, you would actually have Mike Green step up, make a play, force McCarthy into making a terrible decision, and that is how the game would end. With the Ravens winning 27-19, now winning 3 straight at this point, square back in the race for the AFC North Division, given how everything else is gone with other teams there. Lamar Jackson in this game had a touchdown pass and 167 passing yards on a 58.6% completion. Derrick Henry had 20 rushes for 75 yards. And Zay Flowers had 4 receptions for 75 yards in this game. As for the Vikings, now honestly, Aaron Jones Sr. had been playing okay. And on the ground, They had 120 yards rushing and a touchdown on 18 carries. Pretty efficient, if I do say so myself. Why do you feel the need to have him drop back 42 times? And again, yes, the Ravens' defense hasn't necessarily been that great. But again, the turnaround came for them last year in the second half of the season, where they just could not be stopped as a unit. And they might be finding that now. So to challenge them like this, regardless of what had been happening up to this point, seems a little bold to me on Kevin O'Connell's part. Like, I know that you have high praise for J.J. McCarthy and everything like that, but y'all just put that man through hell, bro. He only completed 47.6% of his passes. Like, what were you trying to do to this man? I don't really know. You're not going to win a game having him do that, especially right now. That wasn't the move. Jalen Nailor can at least say he spurred the Vikings unit here with 5 receptions for 124 yards and the aforementioned touchdown. They actually did a decent job of accounting for Justin Jefferson, though. Yeah, there were some misses on McCarthy's part, of course. But the Ravens had some plays where they were right there with Justin Jefferson and making sure that he was not going to be the receiver to go off for this team. They were willing to have anybody else go do it. It was Nailor. Even Addison didn't really have that great of a game by his standards as a complimentary guy. Just 3 receptions and 35 yards for him. So not a noise from their top 2 outside weapons. Leaving Jalen Nailor to pick up most of the slack, and he did. But the Ravens, by that point, had already created enough distance. Tough, brother. Okay. Moving on to Patriots versus Bucs in Tampa Bay. Not only was it the Tom Brady game, if you could affectionately call it that, Logan Ryan would also make an appearance on the broadcast. Famously, he played for both of these teams at one point in his career. So, a lot on the line. A lot on the line from that standpoint. But in all seriousness, Marcus Jones got it rough to start out this game. He got it rough. They were not shameful at going right at the man. And Emeka Egbuka just completely torched up that defense. On the very first drive. In one fell swoop. Literally just gets one in short distance and takes it over the middle for a fucking 24-yard gain down the field. And then later, for some reason, with him, Marcus Jones, being completely locked in on Baker Mayfield's eyes instead of trying to look at the players on the field or even at the ball. He gets caught staring right at him. And he gets frozen just enough for Emeka Egbuka to sneak out in the flat, get wide open, and run into the end zone for a 21-yard touchdown catch untouched and allowing the Bucs to strike first in this game. However, for most of the rest of that quarter at least, with the way that it had been down there from a weather standpoint, both teams couldn't really muster up all that much. Now again, there were some gimme plays that were just missed opportunities from both sides. Like Drake May on this damn drive after the touchdown. 3 straight incomplete passes to Mac Hollins. And all really good looks to Mac Hollins. Just completely wasted They have no choice but to punt in that situation. It is what it is. And while Sterling Shepard would keep it going, with just trucking the hell out of Marcus Jones on this damn play, it wouldn't come to matter all that much. Because when they absolutely needed to pick up this third and somewhat manageable, the coverage was so good that they couldn't get Ibuka. Like, it got to a point in, like, probably the second quarter, and I guess across the rest of the game, he was doing such craziness to that defense that at times they said, you know what? We're going to put our shutdown guy in Christian Gonzalez on him. Immaculate combination of fear of what Emeka Ibuka was on pace to do, and also respect for him as a player and what he had already been doing to this point. Because that's Christian Gonzalez we're talking about. And he got that kind of attention from him throughout the rest of the game. They were not trying to play around. And the Patriots were only starting to get something implemented. I mean, hey, they had TreVeyon Henderson getting the start with Ramondre Stevenson being out. And over time, that would pay off tremendously. But not just yet. You saw a few potential plays for him to just completely burst out a deep run, but it didn't happen just yet. The Patriots defense, again, with Kevin Chason actually managing to make his presence felt early in this game, would single-handedly force the 3-and-out on this next possession. And then all it took for the Patriots to tie it up would be a rocket of a pass on the underneath route, right past the rookie and Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, and Kyle Williams, who hadn't even really been playing all that much. Got the catch over him. It had been his first catch in some weeks, as they went on to say. He housed that shit. Just hauling ass on the sideline for a 72-yard touchdown catch. And just like that, just before the quarter ended and as it was coming to an end, you even up the game. So you're in good hands. And your defense is continuing to contribute. So it feels as though you're going to be somewhat fine. But again, Drake may continue to have a few struggles here. At the very least, the worst for him wasn't happening per se, but the Patriots were just not able to work around that early on. Could have been brutal for them if this drive was successful for the Bucs. I mean, it helped that Ibuka, again, just torching. Just 31 free yards down the field. But they held strong when they got near the red zone. And Chase McLaughlin, rather. Whoa, let's say a different McLaughlin. Don't need to get that mixed up. But yes, he kicked a field goal to give them a 3-point lead. And then the Patriots went through this shit again. Crazy. Like, at least from what I've seen, at least from the games that have been on TV, okay, 3 different times this season, the Patriots have had an opportunity to go into halftime with a lead by having a final drive before then and taking one or getting in the red zone on an attempt to score a touchdown. And most infamously, I think about the situation that took place against the Steelers earlier in the season. You get all those opportunities at punching in a touchdown, and you still have Drake May throw an interception. Well, let's just say the shit nearly happened again. Like, this was a well-executed drive. They controlled it the whole way. Yes, some penalties helped. Some penalties ended up hurting them. But time and time again, when they needed to make a conversion, they got one. Whether it was Stephon Diggs getting it done, whether it was Drake May utilizing his legs, or whether it was him getting the ball smartly on this third down to Demario Douglas. On a slant, they kept making shit happen. And they kept strategically taking time off. That play was also craziness because at that point, you are matching up. You're in empty formation, okay? This man, Demario Douglas, gets matched up on Anthony Nelson, a fucking edge rusher. In space, licking his damn chops as soon as he saw him line up right across from him. I don't care how fast he might be as an edge rusher. You are not playing that game right now. And, hey, they had the perfect counter for it. But once they got a first down run from TreVeyon Henderson, forcing Tampa Bay to use their last timeout. Now you have 1 minute and 44 seconds left. You're in goal-to-go territory at the 1 yard line. The ball is most certainly in your court. And what they proceed to do next, it still makes you scratch your head. I wanted them to get TreVeyon Henderson in the end zone for a touchdown. But they made it so predictable. And after they stuffed him on the second down, you don't want to give the Bucs the ball back. I get it. But you let the time waste off the clock, and now you have 19 seconds left. 3rd and goal from the 1 yard line. And he gets stuffed by David Ndiaye on this run here. They let more time waste off, and now they've got a decision. They could take the field goal in this spot. But I was saying that they should go for it. Like, you worked that hard to get down the field. You've been in this spot before, and you failed to take advantage of it. Something's got to give at some point, right? Right. Stephon Diggs got in the corner of the end zone, got one thrown up to him, and he hauled it in, securing 2 feet in bounds, getting Patriots a 7-point advantage, and actually allowing them to convert on this opportunity for a change. Now, if they can continue to do that over time, who knows? Who knows, bro? And then my boy broke loose. He broke footloose. The epitome of 0 to 100 in this TreVeyon Henderson touchdown run from 55 yards out to open up the second half on the second play of their drive. All of a sudden, Patriots were up 21 to 10. And that one, at the time it happened, was the longest rushing touchdown for a Patriots rookie running back since 1969, when Garrett did it for them. Crazy precedent to break there. But it got even better over time. At least for him. But the offense as a whole, they cooled down a little bit. And that allowed the Bucs to kind of creep back into it for some time. Their drive here to do so, definitely a drawn out one. But before you knew it, Emeka Egbuka again continued to help them get in these positions. You had Cade Otton getting up strong for some catches. And then, after all else failed, literally, on this play. Yet, Mayfield settled into performing a little bit of improv, got out of the pocket, rifled one over to the boundary of the end zone, and he found Tez Johnson with minimal amount of space, granted, for a touchdown. Did a backflip and everything. And while they would fail to get the 2-point conversion, they would at least be in a one-possession ballgame at this point. The Bucs had their chances. They had tremendous chances. Their defense tightened up. They had Antoine Winfield Jr. fucking hitting. And they had Taki Smith, even after Mac Hollins had burned his man over the top 54 yards down the field to set this up. Thanks to Taki Smith and his relentlessness to stick with this play, he worked Drake May into throwing at something that truly was not open. That was the moment right there. Past the halfway mark of the fourth quarter. And the Bucs, again, tremendous opportunity in front of them to take the lead. And this drive was promising. They got right to work. They got down deep into New England territory. But even with them being in a manageable 3rd and 4th down situation, they would hold on for dear life. Now, granted, there was a little bit of the scare. This 4th down actually saw Baker Mayfield stay up on his feet despite being surrounded by oncoming tacklers. And he managed to get a pass off to Rachaad White. But it wasn't meant to be. It still lost yardage. That was all fine. And then you had TreVeyon Henderson bang his head on the fucking goalpost out of the I-form formation. They are just simply trying to run the timeout. And the Bucs, to their credit, set the edge perfectly. They thought for a second that they had TreVeyon Henderson. They did not have TreVeyon Henderson. Bounced right off the fucking tackle and then just went yard. They had Greg Gaines and Vita Vea out in space, trailing the man and trying to tackle him with their slow asses. You're not catching up with that, man. You think you're going to win a foot race with him. You're not going to win a foot race with him. You saw what this man was doing at Ohio State. The same shit is going down in real time as a rookie. And when he had already just set the record for the longest rushing touchdown for a rookie running back in Pat's history since that time, now he just crushed it with that 69-yard touchdown run to essentially put the game on ice. Explosive fucking day for him. And all because they decided to give him the ball. Look what happened. That's why it was such a good idea for them to draft him. But now it's just about getting him immersed in the offense further. And it feels like they might be starting to do that. Now, granted, again, with your injuries, you don't have much of a choice. I mean, to kind of supplement him, they had this other guy in. Not really sure what his name was. But he was also getting some reps. So, having... that was Dearness Johnson. Oh, Dearness Johnson has been around. Okay, interesting. Yeah, they're doing all that trying to navigate around having Ramondre Stevenson out. But if you give him a chance, like Henderson can be that guy. You just gotta keep this shit going. While the Bucs would get Tez Johnson in the end zone for a last gasp touchdown, Stephon Diggs had to go vertical for it, and I'm not gonna lie, he got his shit popped. He went right up to go get it, and they cracked the fuck out of him. Like Deion Jones, I don't know what the hell he did to him, but that shit did feel personal. Nevertheless, Stephon Diggs, that's why he was on the hands team, right? And the Patriots would come away with the 28-23 victory. Hey, I know the Falcons fans were panicking for just a second. That is not what happened here. Relax. All right, for the numbers, Drake May had 270 passing yards, an interception, and also 2 touchdown passes. 51.6% completion percentage for him this season is kind of uncommon. And it did break his streak of games with at least 200 passing yards and 100 plus QBR for sure. But it was still enough to get the win. TreVeyon Henderson, though. We talking about 14 carries for 147 yards and 2 touchdowns on 10.5 yards a pop. Explosive player. Simple as that. The talent is undeniable. They just, as a team, have to be willing to embrace it and give him his chance, bro. That's it. That's it. It wasn't just him, though. Again, Kyle Williams is a rookie as well, getting a 72-yard catch for the aforementioned touchdown. Mac Hollins would lead the way there, though, with 6 catches for 106 yards. And Stephon Diggs would have 5 receptions for 46 yards and a touchdown. As for the Bucs, 273 passing yards and 3 touchdowns on 65.1% completion for Baker Mayfield. Sean Tucker had 9 rushes for 53 yards. Emeka Egbuka had 6 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. Cade Otton had 9 receptions for 82 yards. And Tez Johnson had 4 receptions for 42 yards and 2 scores. Definitely been a rough stretch of the season for the Bucs. And, again, they picked up a lot of quality wins early. But at the same time, their performances in the last few games are definitely a few rough ones to look at, to say the least. They had started out getting all these clutch time comeback wins. It feels like having to consistently battle back from something may have in turn, when it comes to at least their last few games here, gotten them in a situation where now it's like you're almost accustomed to playing in that manner, even when you have control of a game. And that can get a little scary. I would hope that wasn't the case for them. They should be able to pick it back up. I mean, they're still one of the better teams in the NFC, and they still very much have control of their division right now. But even with what's going on, even with the weirdness that has happened over the past couple of years, not to spoil much, but the Panthers can say that they are a game behind them right now. If the Bucs keep on slipping like this, they aren't completely out of the race. So you've got to try to get back on the right track in the games to follow. That's what I would say. Oh boy. Bonus coverage would take place following the end of that one. And I would be kind of transported into the middle of something historic in a bad way. A very bad way. A very bad way. I was tracking this game to the side, and I figured that, the Jaguars would probably win this game. No C.J. Stroud, you're dealing with Davis Mills. It's Davis Mills. They're not winning this game. They're not winning this game. Hold on, holy shit. All of a sudden, it's 29-24 after they had Dalton Schultz get in for a 7-yard touchdown catch at pretty much halfway mark of the fourth quarter. Mind you, The Jaguars had been up by as much as 24 points in this game to nothing at the time. And they entered the fourth quarter with a 19-point lead. So to my surprise, when I see that the Texans have a shot at coming back at this thing, I'm like, okay, that's probably going to be a bonus coverage thing. But what the hell is going on in Jacksonville at this point? Right? What is happening? That is bullshit. There's no way they should have been out of the game. How are you allowing them to creep back into this? Well, we pretty much find that out in no time. The Texans had the ball back with around 6 minutes left. And this is where I got put in that. They had the ball. And as good as this Jacksonville defense has been, when they absolutely had to have it, they just continued to crumble. I mean, yes, they got a couple of good stops on Davis Mills early, forcing early incompletions. But then you allow Dalton Schultz to break free for a 20-yard gain on 3rd and 10 as they're backed up at their own 7-yard line. It became the Woody Marks show. He just kept getting fed. And then you had Jaden Higgins pick up what would be a critical first down before Nick Chubb started to tote the rock as well, seeing as the Texans were trying to take full advantage of this thing. They were not leaving anything up to chance. It was a miracle for them to even be in this game. And now they wanted to ensure that they controlled the narrative here and didn't allow the Jaguars to dictate anything on this. That was the game plan, and they continued to execute that. Now, granted, a couple penalties here didn't help them, but the most crushing one would be from Jarrian Jones. Jarrian Jones can't catch a break. Like I said, this man had to deal with Saquon Barkley reverse hurdling his ass last year. And now he's on the receiving end in this game of a crucial penalty that put the Texans in goal-to-go territory. But again, Jaguars defense, that great. Who knows? Maybe they do all this bending and they don't break whatsoever. That wouldn't stand. They did lock down. They did force a negative play on first down. They did have Greg Newsome II get a pretty good knockout on what was a contested Davis Mills pass. But you can't make it easy on them. So that's respectable, okay? There's also something to be said about them getting that stop and having 40 seconds waste away, even when they had a good number of their timeouts. But that's a different story. Because maybe at that point, again, still you'd probably want to give yourself a shot if you do allow anything and have to get the ball back and do something. But if you could trust in your defense that much, maybe it's nothing. Oh, it became something. Because they couldn't get the pressure they wanted on Davis Mills. Kind of makes sense if you're backing everybody off. But then they allow him to scramble out to his left with blockers flanking him to his side. And he manages to run for a touchdown from 14 yards out. I'll have you know that the graphic they displayed on the broadcast stated that that was his first rushing touchdown since 2022. His first one. Yeah. And that gave the Jags a lead that they hadn't held in this game, allowed them to come back from deficits of 24 and 19. And if it stood, that would be their second largest comeback in franchise history, while it would be the worst fourth quarter collapse for the Jaguars in their franchise history. Terrible history that you, again, don't want to be a part of. And yet, offensive ineptitude would seal their fate. I mean, no, they couldn't necessarily protect Trevor Lawrence, per se. he did still manage to get a smart pickup, scrambling all the way out of bounds for a 21-yard gain, rather. And then in the most anticlimactic way imaginable. Penalties certainly hurt. But they're backed up that far, you're looking for a short play to get in Hail Mary range. And you don't even get that because you have Will Anderson Jr. force a sack fumble on Trevor Lawrence. And Sheldon Rankins, the longtime veteran in the game, runs it in for a touchdown to give the Texans a 36-29 lead. Absolute madness. Again, you're going to throw blame all over the place in a situation like this. But overall, Jags had to be absolutely ashamed with themselves. They had to be. Because it's like, what the fuck? Like, you had it in the bag. You had them put away, and you could not, for the life of yourselves, finish the damn deal. Like, yes, the Texans definitely fought the whole way. But again, all you need, if you are the Jaguars, is a drive, just a drive, to put it away, prevent all of this from happening. Instead, you give up 26 points in the fourth quarter. 26. Davis Mills in this game had 292 passing yards and 2 touchdowns with an interception on 60% completion. Woody Marks had 63 rushing yards on 14 carries and a touchdown, while Nick Chubb added 5 for 47. Nico Collins had 7 receptions for under 36 yards. There you go. Dalton Schultz had 7 receptions for 53 yards and a touchdown. And Jaden Higgins, the Iowa State man himself, had 5 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. As for the Jags, this is the thing. Like, even with them being in this position, this is the thing. Like, we've got to continue asking this question, even if I did have to apologize for it after the Jags game against the Chiefs. I guess the same thing still applies because, like, you look at Trevor Lawrence in these cases, and again, you just question if he is truly able to put this team over the top in some of these cases. I mean, even with them jumping out to this lead, it was with Parker Washington actually getting himself a punt return for a touchdown that extended it to that territory. Now, again, I can't really give a definitive answer. This was not a live ball game throughout the whole time. But just 158 yards, a touchdown, and an interception on 56.5% completion. Even if that doesn't tell the whole story, it's like, you couldn't bring more to the table? And they are paying you how much money? They were reportedly trying to name the stadium after you. Man, I remember that. And again, I don't know if that is necessarily going to come to be at all, of course, but that, to even think that something like that was potentially in the works, and again, you're performing like this in the midst of all that. No, that is no bueno. That is not okay. Nah, bro. Travis Etienne Jr. would have 16 rushes for 58 yards and a touchdown. And Jacoby Myers led the way with 3 receptions for 41 yards. And Parker Washington also had 3 receptions and 33 yards with a score in this game as well. On the receiving end, that is. Just like, oh, that's just a damn shame. It is. It doesn't get much worse than that, right? Moving on to the Lions versus the Commanders in Landover. To answer my own question that I noted, no. I did not really expect anything out of this game. Still, the Lions had to go in there and play the team in front of them. Mind you, even with the Lions themselves being depleted, they suffered their own blowout loss in devastating fashion in the divisional round, technically earlier in the year, but last season. Gave them a taste of their own kind of revenge here. Man, it got so bad. I just didn't even take a ton of notes in this one. From the very jump, with the Commanders being forced to go 3-and-out, and the Lions just automatically, off the rip, balancing the run game out, balancing the pass game out, and involving Jahmyr Gibbs so damn much that he literally cooked the living shit out of the linebacker that was supposed to be guarding him on a fucking Texas route. Why the fuck do you have this man getting matched up on him? You know he's not going to be able to keep up with him in terms of speed, and he cooked this shit for a 14-yard touchdown catch. And then you realize that it was Dan Campbell calling the plays. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Okay. Yeah. Under his tutelage, they were on the fucking money in this game. Maybe he wanted to find a spark. Maybe he wanted to get certain players involved more. But I don't know. Granted, the all-around assault of this team could indicate that it was probably the perfect time in the season for Dan Campbell to start to launch this campaign as a potential play caller. This team is definitely not at the peak of their powers. And while the Lions team had been doing okay, hey, any chance you have to get better, you'll take. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to playoff time, right, even what you may think is your best may not be enough, always. And it's tricky to balance that out, too, with the whole idea of going with what you know and continuing to stick with what works. That's always the mental challenge going on in a lot of these different coaches' minds when you really look at strategy. But, man, again, hey, anytime to switch up that mentality, what better game to make it happen, I guess. At no point did the Commanders have a chance in this one. At no point. You had Amon-Ra St. Brown himself get an easy third down conversion because it's routine, and then he used his physicality and then some to stretch right over into the end zone to make this a 14-3 ball game. The Commanders had their chances, but again, as soon as this got up to 21-3, with Jahmyr Gibbs again continuing to be a terror, again, blend of speed and sneaky power was just not enough for this Commanders defense to really handle all that much. It got so bad that they were willing to go for 2, and they got the shit to go up 22-3. Also, after one of these touchdowns, I don't know. You know what? Actually, no. Did this happen later, or let me see real quick. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, maybe it was this one. At some point in this game, niggas got so salty that I don't know what happened, but Daron Payne got so pissed off that this man decided to open hand punch Amon-Ra St. Brown. Why, you may ask? I have no idea. Nevertheless, even with them continuing to get their ass beat, Jamison Williams getting open and torching the defense himself, all up and down the field, having his best game of the season, and also getting in for a touchdown here. You now lose Daron Payne for the next game because they suspended his ass. Tough. And then Jahmyr Gibbs, just the dagger was already inserted in this, but him literally just taking a fucking pitch, all right, and going right through the teeth of that outside unit for the defense. Nobody touched him. Nobody touched him. He was gone from the second he got the ball. At that point, you knew it was over. Go home. Some of those guys are already home. Damn. 44-22. Coincidentally, the same score in the Seahawks-Cardinals game. Just flat out domination. Again, if leave it up to them consistently being such a high-scoring offense in these games for them to find their tempo and reset as a unit. Like, I think that they mentioned that, yeah, well, this one right here is one. 7 games with more than 500 yards in a season is the most since 2022 for any one team. And I think that in that same time period, they've had 9 40-point games, which is also the most since that time for any team. Jared Goff in this game had 320 passing yards, 3 touchdowns on 75.8% completion. But this was Jahmyr Gibbs' day, goddammit. This was Jahmyr Gibbs' day. 18 total touches and 172 total yards for him, 142 rushing, and 3 total touchdowns with 2 rushing, making him the 5th player to reach 40-plus scrimmage touchdowns before the age of 24. And he also has the 5th most scrimmage touchdowns before the age of 24. You want to know some of the other people on that list? Randy Moss, Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith, and I believe Jim Brown. Those 4 running backs on that list for scrimmage touchdowns before the age of 24. And Jahmyr Gibbs is young as shit. He is young as shit. He could very much, if he keeps pace for the rest of this season, he could smash that record. He could smash it. His birthday is on March 20th. He has the entire rest of the season out in front of him, and it does not look like that man is slowing down. So he could very much be the record holder for that specific milestone if he keeps this going. And man, that would be well deserved. Jamison Williams would have 6 catches for 119 yards and a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown would have 5 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown of his own. As for the Commanders, Marcus Mariota had 213 passing yards and 2 touchdowns on 72.7% completion. And Treylon Burks had 3 receptions for 58 yards in this game, while Zach Ertz had a 54-yard day on 4 catches. Jalen Lane had a 41-yard catch. And Deebo Samuel had 29 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. Man, that is just, it's gotta be brutal. It's gotta be brutal. But again, if Jayden Daniels is a player that tends to elevate, the fact that he's not out there is certainly going to suck. Like, that's not difficult to see. It's just tough, honestly. Man. All right, moving on to Steelers and Chargers on Sunday Night Football. And honestly, the moment that I saw it, it definitely looked like it was going to be interesting. Between the Steelers trying their best to protect their division lead at the moment, and the Chargers, having a few duds here and there, but still being a formidable team all their own. Especially when it comes to both of their defenses. Did the Steelers get a little lucky last week against the Colts with the fact that they turned the ball over 6 fucking times? Maybe. But maybe there was a chance that they were hitting their stride. This Chargers defense was also not going to take it easy on the Steelers and old man Aaron Rodgers in that offensive unit at all. Definitely had a chance to be a great defensive match. And to be honest, that part would prove to be successful a little bit. I will say that for pretty much the entirety of the first half, Steelers defense handled their business. They definitely got in the grill of those offensive players. They were hitting, flying all over the place. You had Denzel Perryman, for example, getting in for a few strong tackles early in this game. You had cornerbacks doing a decent job of sticking to wide receivers. You had Pierre getting this massive hit on poor Darius Davis over the middle of the field. Slammed that man right to the fucking ground. But that was the nature of it for them at that point. Being as physical as they could with this Chargers offense, who, even with Kamani Vidal being the running back, right? They're going to want to throw the football. Keenan Allen, for example, was on pace in this game. He needed just 2 catches. 2 catches in this game to break the record for most most catches rather, in Chargers history. Passing up Antonio Gates potentially if he could get that done. They held that man in check. He was stagnant, itching to get the record, and they would not let it happen. They wouldn't let it happen. They were stout on that front, to the point where for most of this first half, Chargers draws would read like this. They only got in the red zone 1 time before that point. And they had multiple 3-and-outs. Their only score came from a field goal. They were holding it down and giving their offense a chance to more than respond at this point. And while they made life rough for that Chargers offense for a while, a lot of self-inflicted wounds and missed opportunities would hurt the Steelers, ironically enough, when it comes to the offensive side. Because if you thought it looked bad for the Chargers, between a lack of discipline, an inability to establish concrete action in the running game simply by not committing to it enough, and then putting skill position players in just weird spots, in turn making Aaron Rodgers' job even more difficult. They were not able to take advantage a lot in this one. Not much. Like, as we said last week, they got a good, strong win against a great Colts team. But their offense did not do much of anything in that game. And they were definitely the recipient, the beneficiaries even, of having some short field to work with. And they still, more often than not, did not convert on those opportunities. That did not change. Let's put it like this. They got some penalties going early. The one time on this play, for example, after they forced the 3-and-out on the Chargers, okay, they get short field. They have great field position to work with, and they get in third and somewhat manageable. And you have Metcalf get a great amount of separation. Aaron Rodgers misses him. As brutal as that would be, that would probably stand to have been the most open any wide receiver got in this game for Pittsburgh. And again, that's credit to the Chargers cornerback core for handling their business on their front. But again, as much as you are going through that, well, now you force Aaron Rodgers to sit in the pocket and wait. And he couldn't not afford to be stationary in the pocket when you have edge rushers. For example, Tuli Tuipulotu is one of the top sack leaders in the NFL right now. And he would happen to get his hands on him in this game. But then you're also dealing with the established veteran in Khalil Mack. Not a time to be letting Aaron Rodgers be a sitting duck in the backfield. And time again, you saw him just force up some errant throws and try to make something work because, again, you're not getting wide receivers open. And you have to rush everything at that point. I mean, even with them getting this field goal from Boswell, they forced him to kick it from 59 yards out. They only moved the ball 5 yards on this draw. And then their very next one saw Khalil Mack force a fucking sack fumble on Aaron Rodgers in their own territory, deep in their own territory, forcing him to take a safety. They still had a 3-2 lead, if you can believe that. Okay? I can't go after Chris Boswell that much for missing this field goal here. It's rare. It's Chris Boswell. But that was just their luck in this game. Because not only did that lead to 3 points, but again, the Steelers continued to just stall out. And it got worse. Like, after they get yet another stop, you're getting near the end of the half. It should be your goal to protect the ball. And yet, for, again, some of the same reasons, Aaron Rodgers slightly with a little too much touch. Yes, you have to throw it with some loft. He put a little too much touch on this ball. It ended up being out of the reach of DK Metcalf's hands, and it falls into the hands of a rookie safety, giving the Chargers the ball back, and that automatically led to the Chargers in less than 2 minutes and working the 2-minute warning in as well, grinding out a short drive and controlling the whole flow of the game from here. Lad McConkey had an option route, and that brother made the right decision. Like I said, at that point, they had to establish some kind of momentum there, and that is exactly what they would do. Eccles got completely lost on this route. And with that, they would have a 12-3 lead heading into halftime. More of the same went down for the rest of the game. I kid you not. And if you're a Steelers fan, it just had to be demoralizing to watch. I mean, even with some of the defensive stuff that happened, for example, not even just all the tackling and everything, they legitimately had a chance to bait Herbert into some terrible decisions. Duggar had his hands on a pick, and Porter Jr. had his hands on a pick early in the game. They both dropped those. Again, just their luck in this game. And their defense is doing everything they possibly can. I mean, this graphic kind of put it into perspective even with his recent struggles. This man, TJ Watt, per Next Gen Stats on the graphic that they showed, had gotten at least 40 more, and that probably increased by the end of this game, chip blocks, or faced off against 40 more chip blocks than any single defender in the NFL through week 9. Like, that is insane to think about. And still, as a unit, as a collective, they made plays. They got stops. That's the game plan. And their offense, for the life of them, couldn't do anything at all. Even with Cameron Dicker somehow getting himself in a situation where he missed a kick, they proceeded to turn the ball over on down. And this, at this point, even with this being a 15-3 game, it was at this very moment that some Steelers fans just felt so defeated. Like, you, again, start off establishing a little bit of a running threat with Jalen Warren, but then you just completely stall out. Maybe, just maybe, you're thinking in this situation, they could have taken a field goal, but at the same time, I understand their decision to go for it. I understand it. You had been down all night. You only have a field goal to show for it. With all the trouble the defense has gone through to pay it forward for you, you still aren't compounding on those opportunities. You have to try something at some point. But again, it was more of the same. And you had Aaron Rodgers just completely curse them out. Because it's like, at that point, what do you want the man to do? The plays aren't necessarily all that bad. But he's literally getting screamed at. He's getting pressure in his face. And you expect this man, even at his older age, to make that throw. You're asking a lot. Again, they promptly got themselves out of there. The second that Kimani Vidal got this rushing touchdown, you figured that it was over. And that was with McConkey once again making light work of Eccles. Managed to get a 58-yard catch on this damn play. Now, granted, Eccles was trying to be aggressive. He was trying to go for the work and get a swat. He whiffed badly, and McConkey made him pay for it. Probably one of the more glaring defensive miscues that they had. But even then, it came late in the game. Late in the game, when not even with the Chargers necessarily establishing the run to the extreme like that, even though they are on a Greg Roman offense, they were worn down and fucking tired just because of how frequently they had to see the field on this particular night. And it would not stop. It would not stop. Because the Steelers proceeded to start off this drive with Kenneth Gainwell muffing a catch. Ended it with Calvin Austin III having the ball go right through his hands and into the hands of former Steeler Dante Jackson for Aaron Rodgers' second interception. Oh, but it gets better because the Steelers gunner on the ensuing punt that the Steelers yet again forced, he muffed it. And the Chargers would proceed to go up 25-3. The Steelers, with the help of Roman Wilson, got on the board finally, but it was far too late. And at that point, if you're the defense, that's a slap in the face. You go through all that trouble throughout the more competitive period of the game, and they don't do shit. But now, when it's all over, that's when you want to start activating some offense. Like, okay, come on. But yeah, 25-10 win for the Chargers. They didn't leave anything in doubt here. It was all in their hands. Like, literally. Justin Herbert had 220 passing yards and a touchdown on 60.6% completion. Imani Vidal had 25 rushes for 95 yards and a touchdown. Again, not necessarily the most efficient day. They did still outgain the Steelers. And again, that's simply because of volume. Which, from that standpoint, like, okay. That is definitely something that Greg Roman would like to have in terms of balance. But it wasn't dominant. Lab McConkey had 4 receptions for 107 yards and a touchdown as well. It was just, oh boy. You know, you're definitely going to look at Aaron Rodgers to start. And I wouldn't say that it's all him. But 161 passing yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions on a 51.6% completion. It reflects so poorly on the entire team. And that is the point. Because you started off that high and you've now cratered. With some of the other teams in the division, like the Ravens, per se, creeping right back into the race for the division title. And you have regressed since your hot start, completely. While now having to face off against tougher competition and inevitably deal with the Ravens. What the hell are you going to do then if you're struggling like this right now? The passing attack isn't even worth mentioning all that much. Like, you hate to see it. And even from DK Metcalf's perspective. But again, like, Nobody's necessarily said this explicitly. At least this first portion. They signed that man to a 5-year, $150 million contract extension to be their number one guy. And for one reason or another, no matter where you want to look, they mentioned the stat, I've heard it in multiple places, that the man is averaging just 36 yards per game in the last 3. What the fuck? That's not okay. That's just not, and that's not going to get the job done. They got to do some soul searching or something. Because if they don't figure this out, man, they will certainly succumb to their schedule, and even worse for them, right? Run the risk of having their first losing season under Mike Tomlin. You know, you want to consistently go 9-8. You want to retain that. You don't want to drop below 500, I guess. But again, the goal should be to improve as a team. That's the thing. It shouldn't be to settle for a mediocre record. That is an aspect of this supposed standard, because they say the standard is the standard. That's just got to change. Like, that is just unacceptable. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, man. Okay. Moving on to the Monday Night Football action in Eagles and Packers. So, man, well, with the games that I actually watched, we could say that the Broncos and Raiders game was, again, from multiple standpoints, one of the worst ever in NFL history. This Eagles-Packers game in Lambeau would try to give that a run for its money. It just turned out to be flat out ugly, and also just from some of the decisions that happened in this game, just confusing, head-scratching at times. Because, again, you have people going out in the frozen tundra in Lambeau willing to see this team play yes down Tucker Kraft for the season, unfortunately. But the, passion was still high. Man, that would be tested. Again, you're freezing your ass off in Green Bay at this point, trying to watch your team, if you are a Packers fan at that point, go out and win a tough battle against a team in the Eagles that have had your number over the past few seasons. Obviously, the Packers not only lost to them last year, but also did so in the wild card round. Salty ass niggas tried to ban the tush push because of that. But no, seriously. This was a grand opportunity for you to turn the tables here. Get a one-up on them. If there's one thing you can say about this, it's that you definitely had a defensive masterclass in this one. You certainly did. I mean, even in the moments on this first drive, for example, where the combination of Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs tried to establish something there was always resistance at the right time. You had Jalen Hunt overpower a man just to get his hands on Jordan Love and sack him in the backfield and then force a punt here. But the Packers defense themselves had answers of their own. I mean, when I say that this is a quintessential drive for the Eagles, okay, it is. A 16-play, 77-yard drive that lasted almost 9 minutes long. How many times did you see that happen for them last season? And drives like those were at times able to influence how they approach the rest of the game. Some of these games did come at, some of these drives rather, came towards the tail end of games and determined whether or not they would win. One would think, with me just laying those numbers out there, that they scored on this drive. They got in the red zone. But, little did Jalen Hurts know, okay, even if he wants to be a downhill runner himself, Edgerrin Cooper is such a good weapon for the Packers to have. Again, you have Rashawn, just think about that. Rashawn Gary and Micah Parsons on the edge. Lucas Van Ness is obviously out right now. But you have that kind of luxury there to where you put Edgerrin Cooper out as an off-ball linebacker. And what does he do? He gets a punch out on Jalen Hurts, gives the Packers the ball back. And at the end of the first half, end of the first quarter, I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. It remained scoreless because of this. The Packers themselves would try to, this is the most confusing stuff, and I guess I'm going to constantly reiterate this. How the fuck do you get yourself in this position? They themselves, on the very next play following this fumble, had a miscommunication on the handoff, and Jordan Love almost fumbled it away back to Philadelphia. You can't make that up. And, with that loss in yardage, he did almost get it back single-handedly. But that is a tough way to derail your own opportunity. Man, and then it just got even more confusing and even more gritty in terms of a defensive game, right? Because for the next few, you had this 3-and-out from the Eagles, followed with a few decent runs from Josh Jacobs. But again, the Eagles would hold strong, making sure that the rookie and Jahad Campbell kept Luke Musgrave just short of the line to gain, forcing them to punt here. Eagles yet again get another opportunity, but forcing Jalen Hurts to throw that ball, that didn't go anywhere. And in fact, Braden Mann actually had a pretty short punt on this. So then, Packers, hey, you have a decent starting position on the field. They themselves, with Jalen Carter being an absolute wrecking ball, held them to just a 2-yard drive and another 3-and-out. And then the Eagles, with some of their own penalties, kind of fucked up their momentum on this one. But the Packers still had a job to do, and that they did. They had the advantage of the 2-minute warning in front of them. Around 2 minutes at that point left in the first half. Hey, it had been a quiet game to this point in terms of any production of any kind. I don't believe, if I'm not mistaken, let me just go right back through this. But unless I'm crazy or something, right? Yeah. Right. Outside of the initial return from Savion Williams to open the game, in terms of plays from scrimmage, there was not a single 20-yard play at this point. So, if you are a guy who definitely loves their offense, you were not going to love this game a lot. I could just tell you that right now, right? Yeah. It was like that. Oh, but it does get better because the Packers actually did have a good start to this drive. You know, the Eagles forcing them to take some short yard gains here. They obliged. They were able to. The ball was in their court. They had the ability to take full control of this game simply by just getting on the board. You didn't even necessarily need a touchdown. It would help to get it. 7 points is greater than 3. Just, don't turn the ball over. Don't do anything stupid. Oh my fucking goodness. And again, yeah, this is where the head scratcher starts to kick in for you. Because at that point, you have around 30 seconds left. You're nearing Philadelphia's red zone. What would you even be dropping back to pass for in this situation? I don't know. Fine. But Jordan Love gets sacked on the play. Okay. You don't want to necessarily lose yardage, given how underwhelming Brandon McManus has been over the past few games and how Matt LaFleur might just really not like his kickers. From fucking Anders Carlson to Braden Arbison, now to Brandon McManus. But that's a different story for a different time. Even with all that being said, as long as you keep the ball in your hands, you still have a shot to make something out of this drive and salvage it. For whatever reason, as Nakobe Dean is forcing him into a sack fumble situation, Jordan Love tries to throw the ball and fails to the point where it just slips right out of his hands. And he gives the Eagles the ball back. With Jalen Phillips in, really quickly, all this talk about defense. The fact that I had not mentioned how well Jalen Phillips had been playing in this game to this point is a crumb. Not only did he have that fumble recovery, but he immediately got right to fucking work with this team. Like, he was getting some good pressure in, and so was Micah Parsons as well. But Phillips is the focus here. He was doing all that, was getting some solid TFLs and tackles out in space. The fact that he was already coming in and doing this and staying relatively healthy the whole time, that just goes to show you that, again, if you can get that consistently from him, this just gives the Eagles more of a luxury than they even need at this point. And that, again, just punctuated it. But that, with the Eagles themselves, I'm not really sure. Because you had, and I mean, Jalen Hurts has certainly had the situations where he's lined up to throw Hail Marys and thrown absolute ducks down the field. Like, that fucking one against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I think this happened in. Even though that game was tremendous, and I'm talking about their first matchup against each other in the Super Bowl, that shit sends me. That man stepped all the way back and tried to take a few extra steps forward just to put as much loft on the ball as possible, just for that shit to come up like 30 yards short of the fucking end zone, bro. That shit sends me every single time. And yet on this one, maybe he didn't think that he could get anything out of this. But rather than at least try to throw the ball to the end zone, you throw the ball out of bounds? Like, what? So all that. Pretty elaborate way to go through all of that. But what I just explained to you in as best of the detail that I could was the first scoreless half on Monday Night Football since a Ravens versus Browns matchup on the program in 2009. That shit happened. Even if, again, you're looking at the Thursday Night Football game by comparison and saying that that was one of the worst games ever, at least they can say that one of those teams got on the board in either half. And so, it was the Eagles' task on the first drive of this third quarter to just do something for the sake of all things good about the sport in the eyes of some people. Just do something. Anything. Right? I shit you not that they did start off well, but this Jalen Hurts throw to Dallas Goedert, which was a pretty good one down the field, was unironically the largest completion of the game at that point on 22 yards. And they just continue to keep Goedert going. They run this consistently. And the fact that at multiple points on this drive, the Packers got by it was insane. Because what they do is they have this little RPO set and they bring Dallas Goedert into like a rub route near the flat, and you will always see Jalen Hurts look to that if it's open. Did that 2 times. Didn't stop either one of them, and one of these, the latter one, led to a first down conversion to get the Eagles even further in Packers territory. They started to rely on Tank Bigsby and Will Shipley a little bit. And even when there was already a TFL, penalties didn't help them. But they made the field goal. We had a score. Yeah. Still, for a while, with how good both of these defensive units had been to this point, that would be the only one for a little while. Now, Jordan Love again did have his own kind of stuff going. Christian Watson managed to get himself a 20-yard catch on a crosser. But they still just could not move the ball. I mean, hell, like, after this one, I think they mentioned that Bo Melton, who was targeted on the fourth down, he didn't catch it. Had 9 targets on the season and no catches. Now, yeah, he converted to cornerback. Left him disjointed as fuck. Now, he did not know what the hell he was doing on this front. He was lost. Unfortunately. But the Packers, again, they would not show any quit. They kept hanging in there. This offense could not do anything. They couldn't do anything. And it's like, Even it's crazy, man, because it's like even they, as this Micah Parsons trade went through, even they said it themselves. Like Micah Parsons was essentially saying, like, even if the offense isn't having their best day, they know essentially that we'll go and get it back as a defensive unit. And they kept doing that time and time again. Even in those struggle games, you got to answer the call at some point. There's only so much you can do at the end of the day. And they just kept on hitting a literal wall. That's what it felt like. Then the Packers finally broke as a defense. Because something had to give way. And again, while people are naturally going to look at Devontae Smith getting on a post route and mossing the shit out of Evan Williams in the end zone, it did start with this third down conversion where you had it's Saquon Barkley. Okay, that was the more pivotal play. And I heard somebody say that. I agree with that. You saw this man get out of space, out of the backfield, catch a short pass, and he proceeded to get a little mini juke going, spun the living shit out of Corey Valentine. All of a sudden, he's hauling ass down the sideline, running past every single Packers defender for the most part. And then Xavier McKinney catches up with him for what would be a 41-yard gain. That was the most important play. And it set up that touchdown to give the Eagles a 10-0 lead. It's crazy. Like, every single loss you look at for the Packers this season, their offense doesn't do jack shit for the longest time. And their defense is doing everything in their power to keep them in the game. Yet, you wait until literally the final moments of the game to wake up as an offense and do something. Right on time, right on schedule, that's exactly what would happen on this next drive. Knowing that they desperately needed something, and maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, but why does it have to come to that all the time, right? They would get it here. With Bo Melton actually reining in a catch. With Savion Williams getting a little bit of work in, and with them also having a good penalty drawn by Musgrave on the rookie and Jahad Campbell, what would be a brutal mistake for him, despite playing relatively well. Josh Jacobs, no matter what's going on with the Packers, he is a man that is going to get his rushing touchdowns. Dating back to last season, he's on a tear when it comes to just simply getting in the end zone. You can almost pencil it in on a game-to-game basis. That's how sure you can be that he's going to score a touchdown. And promptly, the Packers would now be down 10-7. Through all the craziness that happened in this game already that I mentioned, okay, this entire situation right here, like, I tell you, you might genuinely have to get yourself checked out at a clinic or something if you play this shit back and watch it again. Because I still don't even understand it now. And this happened days ago. The Eagles have a shot to put the game away. And they take a nice chunk of time off, balancing in a good portion of passes and a few runs to put the Packers at ice. Force them to get as desperate as possible. Now, it's still a field goal game for them at that point as Braden punts it away. Now again, from the 48-yard line of Green Bay, I understand that one. That's fair. That is fair. Jake Elliott does not have that kind of leg. Conditions aren't really beneficial to him in terms of kicking it from that far out. Fine. Everything else that happened after this is chaos. Everything else that happened after this is chaos. I mean, yes, Christian Watson got in a great catch over the middle on a third down for a 25-yard gain. But then, Jordan Love got absolutely boxed up. And even with him getting this pass into Musgrave once more, they had to settle for going for it on fourth down. They had no choice. You had to score, right? Josh Jacobs gets stripped by Reed Blankenship, which could end the game. As crushing as it would be for the Packers, that would be all they needed. They already got an illegal formation penalty along with this as well, but nevertheless, the Eagles had the ball back. All you had to do was end the game. So, you run, and run the ball. Fine. You're making sure the Packers don't have any more of their timeouts left. And that worked. By the time this fourth down took place, there were just 33 seconds left. It's okay. You're going to take a field goal, right? Even with this being from the 35-yard line. You could take a field goal. Like, Jake Elliott has made 50-yarders in his sleep. Forget about last season. That shit was last season. We know he struggled with 50-yarders last season. Traditionally, he's been a good kicker from that range. But again, maybe in Sirianni's mind, again, field conditions out there were not conducive to him being able to get one in successfully. Okay, fine. You punt the ball and pin them back deep to force them to have to score. Keep everything out in front of you as a defense. And tackle them in balance to rush their drive and leave them with very little time to operate. That could be a viable option too. Not only did the Eagles do neither, but Nick Sirianni and this man Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, Passing. Because on 4th and 6, with 33 seconds left to go, in a crucial Monday night football game, passing was the key to success. You dial up a shot to A.J. Brown and Carrington Valentine. Why did I say Corey Valentine? Carrington Valentine was all over it. All over. And you turn the ball over, you give the Packers a decent opportunity to now tie the game themselves with being in great field position. It took one catch from Bo Melton to get them near field goal range. And again, you already had Nick Sirianni make a pretty wild choice If that wasn't enough, Matt LaFleur, man. I kept saying it the whole time. I remember it vividly. You're trusting Jordan Love's arm in this situation. You are trusting Jordan Love's arm in this situation. You are trusting Jordan Love's arm in this situation. He kind of does. They try to get a short pass in to get McManus even closer, but not for long. Because he doesn't put his faith in his quarterback, who probably has a strong enough arm to get it into the end zone. He relies on Brandon McManus, who is now 34 years old and already coming off of dealing with nagging injuries, to kick a 64-yard field goal to tie the game with the conditions in mind. You already saw the Eagles clearly be scared of trusting Jake Elliott from closer range in this game. And you decided that old ass and hampered with injuries Brandon McManus could make a 64-yard field goal at his given age. And it missed. It didn't even get close. Telling me it got blocked. No, it didn't get blocked. The snap was bad. It was bad. The hold was bad. And McManus promptly shanked the fucking field goal. And the Packers, for yet another week, 2 consecutive weeks in a row, off of the most mind-numbing shit imaginable, lose a one-score game. If your defense is holding a team to 10 points, you traditionally win. Think about this shit for a second, because this put it into perspective right here. And honestly, fuck the numbers. Because when it comes to this, even with the defenders having some really good games on both teams, and with the Eagles getting themselves a nice win here to extend their lead in the NFC East and keep a little winning streak going, they themselves have their own questions to ask about how sustainable that kind of offense is. Because that shit isn't it either. Even if, as a team, they do find ways to win, they are going to have to get a lot stronger in that front. Admittedly so. But looking at this from the Packers' perspective, they mentioned that this man, again, the comparison between Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers will probably never stop. It's literally in his blood. The whole fucking Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers prototype is in his blood. And those careers are forever linked. Because the narrative at the time was that this was Aaron Rodgers' replacement in 2020 when he did get drafted from Utah State in the first round. And he's established a solid start to his career as a starting Green Bay quarterback. But they mention that Aaron Rodgers, in his time, where a defense, especially with the Packers, right, held a team to 16 points or fewer in a game, Aaron Rodgers was 65-4 across his entire career in these situations. And we know how much of a gunslinging quarterback Aaron Rodgers was, especially in his prime. You can also say whatever you want about the playoffs and how he performed in clutch time situations there. Fine, whatever. But 65-4 in those cases. Why have the Packers under Jordan Love lost 3 such games this season when that has happened? Why? Literally, all 3 of their losses holding an opposing team to 16 points or fewer. And because the offense in those situations still cannot produce, they have a 5-3-1 record despite being one of the more formidable teams in the NFL. That has just got to be exponentially frustrating if you are a hardcore Packers fan to swallow. That should not happen. That should not. Like, come on now. Nah, man. Nah, just that's just ridiculous. That'll do it for the game action that I watched. Because, no. Oh, boy. But to get into some of the other action as best as I can. The Colts and the Falcons in Berlin. Jonathan motherfucking Taylor. That's all I have to say about this one. Jonathan motherfucking Taylor. Yes, he struggled last week. He did. That is not a player that is going to consistently struggle. I said it too. When I saw that he was limited to such a low amount of scrimmage yardage, that maybe this was just a fluke for Jonathan Taylor to deal with. 45 measly yards in the rushing game. I don't think anybody could have predicted him going for 244 rushing yards. And 3 touchdowns on 32 carries on a hyper-efficient 7.6 a pop. And added 3 receptions for 42 yards out of the backfield. Single-handedly vaunting that Colts offense to victory in what would be an overtime game. They had no answer for him. Yes, there were actually a couple of runs that I saw him post. He was stopped behind the line to gain. But even in those situations, you would have another run where even though they thought they had him, they didn't have him. That 83-yard touchdown run would be a career long for him. And that was the encapsulation of how everything really went. You have multiple defenders converging on him. You think he's down. He breaks out of the tackle and speeds down the line of scrimmage, untouched by anybody else, for the score. He ends off the game, shaking Jesse Bates III, one of the best safeties in the NFL, out of his fucking shoes. Loses him. Totes it right up the gut for the game-sealing score. It was the Jonathan Taylor show. And while Daniel Jones did still have an interception in this game, he also had 255 yards on 73.1% completion. Definitely made some sound reads when he needed to. And he managed the game in this one. honestly, he's been running the show well, but this is a situation where you simply want him to manage the game if you're going to have Jonathan Taylor take it over like that. In a game where the team, with his efforts, combined for 323 yards on the run. Tyler Warren in this game had 8 receptions for 99 yards and actually threw more than the halfway mark for the Colts now of this season. Actually set the rookie record for tight ends in Colts history for catches. I'm like, he already did that? He's smashing the shit out of that record, though. Truly a beast. And to think that all the Bears had to do was just draft him. You chose Colston Loveland, bro. Like, come on, man. Like, fuck, man. There's no need to do... Like, that is... Like, even if Colston Loveland... Fuck Michigan. Even if he goes down as a decent tight end, okay? That is going to go down as one of the weirdest decisions in the NFL draft. Maybe not in its history, but definitely something weird to have to look back on. Like, Tyler Warren was clearly the more talented guy, and you still, with him on the board, decide to go elsewhere. Why? Why? Why the fuck? Like, no, man. The Bears could have had this. And again, Loveland's had a few good games to this point now, but still, man, like, jeez. Alec Pierce had 4 receptions for 84 yards and a touchdown. Oh, yeah, also, why did I not bring that up? Jonathan Taylor, with his monstrous day, would also set Colts history, passing the legend and Edgerrin James in rushing touchdowns as a Colt. All time. He is now the franchise leader. And again, as long as he continues to produce, as long as he stays a Colt long term, because honestly, we saw what happened last year with Saquon Barkley leaving. Maybe because he wasn't wanted. I don't know. Just a hunch, right? As long as he stays there, he's going to run that record up and make it to where he sits very highly at the top of that particular throw. As for the Falcons, this was just a weird one. Like, Bijan Robinson, even with his 84 rushing yards on the ground, was outdueled. It was all Jair that got the rushing touchdowns in for him this game, accounting for 2, and he had 57 rushing yards. Michael Penix Jr., like, I don't know. Because while he did get 104 yards over to Drake London and a touchdown pass, at the same time, just 42.9% completion. And also just weird plays. Like, as I was tracking the game, you had yet another situation from Michael Penix Jr., where this man decided to throw a ball out of bounds with no receivers in the area as they are nearing halftime, and the shit promptly ends on an intentional grounding penalty with a 10-second runoff. That happened at the end of the game. Now again, 25 seconds, there's not much for you to do there. It's just like, come on. What is that about? Credit to Xavier Watts for getting 11 tackles, though. And I mean, Jesse Bates, even with that being said, did have 9 tackles, an interception, and 2 pass deflections. Zaire Franklin also had 10 tackles, 2 TFLs, and a sack as well. Good win for the Colts, though. In all seriousness, just, man, oh man. All right. Moving on to the Bears and the Giants. So, the Giants were winning this game 20-10 to open up the fourth quarter until they absolutely were not. Now, they did lose Jackson Dart for the game with a concussion injury. He had taken multiple design quarterback runs to this point, and he ended up getting injured on one of them, as I saw in post, taken into concussion protocol, and at that point, you're going to be ruled out. In came Russell Wilson, who led them on that field goal drive. They didn't do anything after that point. And they allowed the Bears to linger in this game. It would be Caleb Williams who would reign victorious in this one. Literally taking it upon himself to make some tremendous plays down the stretch. Not only did he lead them on a 9-play, 91-yard touchdown drive with a touchdown pass to Ramadunze capping that off, you also had him take a fucking scramble over to the left side of the field, 17 yards, near the boundaries, for the game, well, go ahead at that point, touchdown run. And then even with the Giants getting the ball back, it promptly ended with a Russell Wilson pass getting batted down at pretty much the line. Wasn't all too different from how things have been going with them earlier in the season. And promptly, even when it looked like the Giants had a chance in this game, the Bears would win 24-20. With Caleb Williams, I think they mentioned that this was his fourth game-winning drive of the year. Pretty impressive stuff. 220 yards passing for him and a touchdown on 55.6% completion. Definitely want it to be a little bit cleaner than that, but fine. He also accounted for the rushing touchdown and had 63 yards in the ground. DeAndre Swift had 80 rushing yards on 13 carries, and Kalamenagai had 7 rushes for 28 yards and a touchdown. Ramadunze had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown, while Colston Loveland had 4 receptions for 55 yards, and Luther Burden III had 3 receptions for 51. All right. As for the Giants, I mean, when Jackson Dart was healthy, he honestly played fine. I mean, his damage was being done on the ground too. 242 passing yards for him to go along with 66 rushing yards on 6 carries and with 65.5% completion along with 2 different rushing touchdowns. It's not like these design quarterback runs were for nothing per se, but if you're going to continue putting him at risk, you have to question if it's worth it or not after a certain point. Tyrone Tracy Jr. had 71 rushing yards on 14 carries. And Darius Slayton, along with him getting a pretty interesting circus catch, did have 4 for 89 yards. While Theo Johnson had 7 receptions for 75 yards. Wendell Robinson had 6 receptions for 62 yards. And Devin Singletary had 3 receptions for 53 yards out of the backfield. The Giants, I'll briefly say, had enough of the BS. Yesterday, per Schefter, they fired Brian Dable. Or, well, on Tuesday, I should say, they fired him. At this point. Yeah. Between the fact that he held a 20-40-1 record, overall, abysmal. Not much to show for himself after that 2022 season, where he won Coach of the Year and actually managed to win a playoff game with Daniel Jones under center. Between what those players in Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley, either one of them you want to name, are doing post-Giants playing career. And with the way the team is looking right now, they had enough. Maybe the writing was on the wall anyways. So they probably could have waited until the end of the season. But once they saw their prized asset go down potentially, and again to think that, Brian Dable was going to these extreme lengths just to make sure that he was okay in the Eagles game on Thursday Night Football, you'd think that that would help him understand just how valuable it was and how important it was for him to keep him as healthy as possible and upright. And that didn't happen. He fucked it up, so they got him the fuck out of there. I think they said their interim was Mike Kafka, and I know I'd heard that name around a few good times. So we'll see how that works for them. He'd apparently been up for multiple head coaching positions at this point. So they might have a solid guy there. We'll see how that ends up going. The Saints and the Panthers. The Panthers got the scoring started in this game, okay? They had Rico Dowdle punching in for a touchdown, but that would be the final time they'd score in this game. And they allowed the Saints, for as bad as they'd been all season long, they allowed them to win. They allowed Tyler Shuck to win a football game in this climate. In the ugliest way imaginable. I just looked and at the recap, it said something about complimentary football. Maybe, but at the same time, if you're the Panthers, what is this? You start the scoring off, and then your drives throughout the rest of this game proceed to go punt, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. That's just the first half. These people, just look at how fucked up this sounds. This game wasn't even on live. Ryan Fitzgerald got his kick blocked. In an eternal scramble for the football, the Saints actually muffed this shit. The Panthers got the ball back. They got it back. Got a 2-for-1 possession, essentially, and they fumbled again in Saints territory. Do credit the Ohio State man Pete Werner for getting the fumble recovery, but what is that? What is that about? You already messed up the first time, and it seemed like for a second you were rewarded for your mistake. You instantly learned your lesson. You got the ball right back, and you drive down the field just to fumble again. But Panthers defense did bail them out by getting a turnover on downs. And you had Bryce Young immediately gift an interception right back to Alontae Taylor. That at that point, the Saints decided, okay, enough of this. We're just going to have Tyler Shuck he had a 30-yard touchdown pass to Juwan Johnson just because. And I mean, that was the game. It doesn't make sense. Again, football is a great sport. But in some of these cases, man, some of these things will truly rack a person's brain. Shuck had 282 passing yards on 70.4% completion and 2 touchdown passes. Alvin Kamara had a total of 25 touches for 115 yards. It's about right for him. Giving Shuck a safety valve of his caliber makes a lot of sense. Chris Olave got fed. 5 receptions for 104 yards and a touchdown, including a, I think, 62-yard touchdown catch from the Ohio State man. So you'll take that. And 4 receptions and 92 yards and a touchdown catch as well for Juwan Johnson in this game. As for the Panthers, 124 passing yards and an interception for Bryce Young on 68% completion. Okay. Donald, although he had been doing well in his starts to begin the year, he'd gotten bottled up by this front 7 of New Orleans. 53 rushing yards and a touchdown on 18 carries. It's definitely not efficient by his standards, at least as far as this season is gone. Tyrell McMillan had 5 receptions for 60 yards in this game as well. It's just an absolutely weird one. Speaking of weird, oh boy. Okay, so let's just put this into perspective for a second. All right. And this game wasn't live. The Browns did actually manage to get the first score on the board. I thought they had been so willing to trade away David Njoku. He managed to get the scoring started for him. They lost their fucking minds. They lost their minds. Something wasn't clicking. Because what really does go right for this team? You want to know how they managed to lose this lead? They allowed the Jets to do something that they hadn't done in their entire history as a franchise. They got a kickoff return for touchdown and a punt return for touchdown in the same quarter. Let alone the same game, the same quarter. Okay, but how? How did that happen? Back to back to back to back. Like Drake, like Future. Back to back. Drives. A 99-yard kickoff return for touchdown for Kene Nwangwu. And then a 3-and-out, leading to yet another punt return touchdown of 74 yards for Isaiah Williams to take a 14-7 lead. And that would stand for a while. All of this while Justin Fields and that offense whatever they call the Jets offense at this point, they had a single passing yard. Justin Fields had a single fucking passing yard. I cannot possibly defend that shit at all. It happened, and they were winning at the same time. Yeah, I went on that whole tangent talking about tank balls. What the hell do you call that? What the fuck do you call that then? If that isn't a tank ball, I don't know ball anymore. I don't know ball. The man was not only so passive in terms of throwing the football. From that perspective, he was being reckless. Iron sharpened iron, as you had him throw an interception to the fellow Ohio State man and Ronnie Hickman. And you had Garrett Wilson, the fellow Ohio State man, tackle him. But hey, some would give, they'd find it. Jerry Jeudy tied up the ball game for them. And the Jets would manage to respond with a somewhat competent drop, though it was mostly just run after run, because of course it was. That's what they've been trying to implement all season. They managed to take the lead, and I mean, the Browns tied it up at halftime, but not before Will McDonald IV continued to ring Dylan Gabriel's bells. In this first half alone, the man had 3 sacks on him by himself. Even with Dylan Gabriel trying to hang in there and initiate some kind of fucking shit. Like, he was still being pursued by athletic freaks on either side of that line. The third quarter was relatively dry, and the Jets would actually manage to take the lead and then win the game. The longest play, the most prolific wide receiver on the day for the Jets would be Breece Hall with this single screen pass taken for 42 yards down the field. I don't have the numbers to tell you how many air yards were accounted for by Justin Fields in this game. I don't have the access to that information. I can tell you right now. Like, it's like, okay, how? And again, they won. They did win this. Because for whatever reason, an idiot on the defensive side of the football decided to jump offsides and grant the Jets the victory. In this, like, again, what do you even call this? What do you call this? Jets won 27-20. I guess, as it should be, both of the teams come out of this game with 2-7 records. Like, literally. I don't even know about the air yardage. All I can tell you was that Justin Fields on the day would finish with just 54 yards passing, a touchdown and an interception on 54.5% completion from the field. That's not a typo. Look in all its glory, okay? Yes. 6-11 passing for 54 yards and a touchdown and an interception. I mean, credit to Breece Hall for having an all-around day. How is he your leading receiver with just the lone 42-yard catch? He led the way in rushing yards as well. Okay, that's decent. Look at this. Look at this, please. Look at this. What the fuck? What the fuck is this? Oh my goodness. Like, what? Bro. And yes, that is not a typo either. On 3 targets, Garrett Wilson himself didn't have a single catch. Matter of fact, the man himself on one of these plays got injured. I think it was him re-aggravating his knee injury, and now he's out again. I guess what they say really is true at this point, man. Shout out to Chisel Adonis, man, because at this point, JETS just in the season, bruh. Just in the season. Just please, please. Like, you have to get back in the lab, because, oh my gosh. Again, like, I have the utmost faith. Yes, I'm going to look like an absolute idiot saying this. I have faith that Justin Fields can be a really good quarterback, okay? This is not it, man. This is hard to see. This is it, bro. No, man. No. Something has got to give. Something. Like, this is not something that can be put up with. Even if the contract isn't necessarily that expensive. This is just $20 million a year. But damn. I would have loved to have gotten a New York newspaper as this game ended. Because, yes, they get crazy over there. But truly, how are they feeling about this? Definitely not positively coming into this. But in terms of this particular game, how are they feeling about this? And again, all of this is a distraction. It's an illusion to force you to not pay attention to the fact that the Browns are in the same boat as a team. They tried to do a little better, but you had yet another rough game from Dillon Gabriel as well. And those questions are definitely going to be coming in about their quarterback play. As much as people would like to see Shedeur Sanders, honestly, it could happen. It definitely has a likelihood. It's just nothing is going right in Cleveland right now. But I guess my thing would be this. Do you really think that they would throw him into the fire against that tough Ravens defense? Because that's their next matchup. And I mean, they technically did that with Dillon Gabriel in garbage time of the first one. when Joe Flacco was still there. But I don't think they want to repeat that same mistake. So I would say if you're them, you're just going to see if he can give you a better game, and you allow Shedeur Sanders to play against the Raiders in the week after this upcoming one. I think that makes a tremendous amount of greater sense. And to cap things off, just briefly, because this was a dominant game through and through for the Rams against the 49ers in Santa Clara. Matthew Stafford continues to have an excellent season. Now, again, when they face off against the Seahawks, actually going to have to come to an end, boy. But as far as this point goes, continuing to keep it going, he reached 400 passing touchdowns. He evened up his record at 117-1. And as far as this game goes, he had 280 yards passing on 66.7% completion, 4 touchdown passes. Now, yes, there are different metrics stating, and even when you look at some of the games, a lot of these touchdowns have certainly been red zone touchdowns. No doubt about it. They've certainly come from short distances. But the fact that he has a 12.5 to 1 interception ratio at this point, still just 2 picks on the season, like, that's impressive. The man is 37 years old doing this. That's something to just be in awe of, I guess. There's a reason why he is in the MVP race right now. It's as simple as that. You can't hate on that at all. Like, it's pretty damn good shit, man. And it also set a few personal bests for him. 13 passing touchdowns without a pick is the most in a 3-game span for him. He's the first to have 20 passing touchdowns and no interceptions in like a 6-game span as well. Just continuing, at least in this sense. Even if in some physical aspects, when it comes to some of the injuries he was dealing with, he has not been able to fully beat Father Time when it comes to his on-field production, especially with what it is right now compared to how it was last season. There were a lot of questions surrounding his ability to keep pace, and you're not having those questions about that right now. I can tell you the truth. You are not. Like, not at all. Although runs weren't as explosive for the Rams, they did combine for 126 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. Devontae Adams had 6 receptions and 77 yards with a touchdown. Pikanakua had 5 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown. Kobe Parkinson had 4 receptions for 41 yards and a score. And Davis Allen would be the very player to catch that 400th touchdown pass. Yes, the Madden created player name individual himself managed to be the guy to help Stafford get that milestone. Do with that what you will. Okay. As for the 49ers, it's not even like Mac Jones played all that bad, but there are levels to this. 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception for him, but on 84.6% completion. Some of that is admittedly garbage time. But, that's not terrible in totality. Christian McCaffrey had a combined 20 touches for 96 yards. George Kittle had 9 receptions for 84 yards and a score, and Jawan Jennings had 6 receptions for 71 yards and a score. And that will do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this. And I will see you guys in the next one, where I'll be handling all the developments for this week. Peace.